Wow, CPAC. How good is this? I love coming to CPAC. My name is Andrew Cooper. I live in a town or city called Brisbane in Australia. I know you've never heard of it. I have. But it's where we're having the Olympics in 8 years' time. It's also where we're having the next CPAC. I'm not sure which of those events will be bigger. CPAC's pretty good. Brisbane's also famous because it's located near the Gold Coast, and we've got the wonderful Great Barrier Reef beside it. We've also got all the things that'll kill you. You know, we've got sharks and snakes and spiders and jellyfish, and yeah, we've got communists as well. They kill more than anyone else, right? I don't know whether you noticed, but Australia's a pretty woke place. Nigel Farage, 2 years ago on this very stage, proclaimed that Australia is the wokest nation on earth. I think part of that opinion was formed because every time he comes to Australia, he gets protested at CPAC Australia. We don't get protesters unless Nigel turns up. But having said that, the COVID experience in Australia was absolutely abhorrent. We had pregnant grandmothers. That's definitely not woke. We had grandmothers, without masks in public spaces, no one around them getting dragged off because they weren't masked. We had a woman that CPAC actually funded the legal defence for, who posted the wrong thing on Facebook and got arrested, handcuffed and dragged off. She was pregnant. There's some crazy things went on down under. And I guess the question that we ask ourselves down under, and also perhaps you have this question, is why? Why would a country like Australia, which we see ourselves as these outback, rough sort of tumble guys and girls, why would they do this? And I think the problem is, in my assessment, is that essentially the Liberal Party, which is the Conservative Party there, the classical Liberal Party, they didn't mount a counter-narrative. All the state premiers, which is equivalent to your governors, all agreed that lockdowns and mandates were the way to go. The federal Liberal Party squibbed it. They decided, that means they capitulated, they threw their lot in with the premiers. And, you have your rhinos, we have our linos. And if you think about it, if all sides of politics are saying that one path is the way to go, it's pretty hard for the disengaged centre to, separate themselves and think, no, this is wrong, right? So you got your activists. We had a lot of protests. They got ruthlessly shut down with stormtrooper-like behaviour. But at the end of the day, when all the parties were saying this is the way to go, that's how we locked ourselves down. That's how we let them get away with this crushing of civil rights, in my opinion. So that was 2 years ago. Oh, I'll give you a statistic to tell you how crazy this was. So if you think about under 50s, the pandemic started in February. At the end of July, 5 people in Australia under 50 had died of COVID. Every one of them had comorbidities that made them susceptible to the disease. 6 people had died of the AstraZeneca vaccine, which we could call a virus. 8 people had died of shark attack. I mean, it's insane, right? You could still swim in the ocean, but you weren't allowed to leave your home. It was just incredible. In the back of all that, the Federal Labor Party, the left-leaning party, took power 18 months ago, federally, and they decided the smart thing to do, Australia's pretty woke, let's play some wedge politics, let's introduce a change to the Constitution where we create what we'd call a third chamber, a separate kind of parliament. We have, like you, we have our House of Representatives, we have our Senate, and they were going to create this third sort of chamber, and that chamber would have veto powers over the houses that are elected by the people. The only people that could be elected or appointed to that separate chamber of government were from one particular race, our Indigenous Australians. If you think about our values, the values that we share, conservatives share across the globe. This breaches one of our fundamental beliefs, doesn't it not? That we're all equal. We're all born equal. One vote, one value. How is it that one race can get more power over all the other races? And we've got a lot of them in Australia, just as you have. This proved very popular. The reason it was popular initially was because there's not an Australian alive that doesn't want for better outcomes for some of our remote area Indigenous communities. I mean, we do. But this was never going to help them. The problems in those remote areas is generations of welfare dependency and drug abuse and lots of problems, kids roaming the streets. This parliament was never going to help, but it was popular. And this is what the left does, don't they? They wedge us, they divide us. They tried to divide us by accusing anyone who votes against this measure was a racist. You've heard this, right? You get that here, right? Yeah, it's abhorrent. Australia is not a racist country, but they will try to tell everyone that will listen that we are racist, and we're not. What this was a fundamental breach of that value. We're all equal. CPAC had an absolute fundamental Australia had a fundamental place to play in the fight back against this legislation, against this referendum, this constitutional change. Our chairman, who unfortunately can't be here today because of personal reasons at the last minute, our chairman Warren Mundine, an Indigenous Australian, a well-known advocate for Indigenous business and getting people off welfare and advocating for Indigenous organisations and people and individuals to get up and make a life for themselves. He, along with Indigenous Senator and CPAC Speaker Jacinta Price, went on a road trip for a year explaining to Australian people that this cannot stand, this division within Australia, this tearing the country apart and claiming that people who don't vote for this are racist, this creating extra powers for one race is fundamentally not what a liberal democracy like Australia is about. And guess what? We won. It was fantastic. And not just one, it was a smashing. It was an absolute smashing. It started at 70% in favour. By the end of it, that had dropped down to 40%, and that sort of margin is unheard of. So a big proportion of the country changed their mind, and so that was fantastic. I personally am very hopeful that Nigel Farage, when he pronounced us as the most woke nation on earth, I'm hopeful he'll take his words back. Because the wokest nation on earth would not have voted against that referendum. Australia is actually a deeply conservative country. We elect Conservatives more often than we ever elect the left. And to me, I was very proud of the Australian people. I was proud of Warren, and I was proud of all the things that we learned from CPAC, and we took those back to Australia. I'm just, I think there's a renaissance, a pendulum swinging back in Australia. I'm really hopeful that it's well and truly underway here in the US. I mean, we need a change of government. We need a change of president here in the US. You are the light on the hill. You always have been. You're the greatest nation on earth. We need a leader that can